Hi everyone, it's Doc Joey here from Story Review Games with another update on Slaughter, the horror movie making card game. This arrived for me in the post the other day, and I've opened it up, and I thought I'd show it to you. What we've got here is, get rid of this stuff, are pod versions of the core deck. Now, the reason I've reproduced those is, put that box out of the way, is I wanted to get another handle on how these would look. Pod is not as solid a print quality and card as that we will be producing, but at least it gives me, if I can undo this damn list, at least it gives us a good playable deck that we can take off and run through. And I just thought what I might do is just go through the cards. Now this is only about 2/3 of the cards that you'll be getting in the box set. This set I have here is the base deck and Surviving the Horde deck. So what we can see here is we have a good solid supply of, oops, there we go, of the character cards. So you can see plenty of really good solid character cards to work through. So I will be using those in our next generation playtest. We corrected some of the typos and things that we had. We then have the injury cards. Now, injury cards are super important for the game because they not only demonstrate how close you are to being dead, which is important, but more importantly, they give you hints on how your character will end up playing that injury. Injuries in horror movies are not just, you know, they're not just, oh, I've been damaged. They're not just a hit point. They actually have a serious narrative effect. Break your leg, you're going to be hobbling around, the killer's going to eat you. Bleeding in the water, the shark's going to chomp on you, and so forth. Then we have a really good selection of madness cards here. Let me just bring out. So this will be the madness cards, again, in the base deck, levels 1 to 5. And interestingly, in zombie movies, the madness cards actually kill more players, cause more players to die than the injury cards. The reason for that is every time you take an injury, you take madness. But when you heal injury, you don't reduce madness. And at the high levels of madness, you start doing some pretty stupidly bad and awful things. It also is really great in serial killer adventures because quite often you'll find as you're working through the game, as people are starting to accumulate more and more madness, one of them may or may not turn out to be the killer. And that's always great fun when suddenly someone realizes, oh, my character was the killer all along. And thus you get wonderful movies like Scream and all sorts of other things. So, now, here is another part of the base deck. Whoops. I'll just get them all out. These are the, there we go, the prop cards. And the prop cards basically are archetypal props that can change the narrative of the story. They're not your typical thing that you have in the movie, you know, that you have in a scene. For example, if I walked into a lab and there was, you know, a bunch of, you know, there's a stapler on the desk, who cares? But if I grabbed a stapler and use it as a weapon, it might have a small narrative effect, but not really much. But if there was a big damn, you know, if there was a meat cleaver in there or a scalpel or a fire extinguisher that's much bigger and better scene, yeah, you know, then you get to play one of these narrative cards. So those are the prop cards. And also in the base deck, we have the most important things, the special effects cards. Now, the special effects cards are how you make a monster. So with these, basically what you're doing is you are building a monster by combining a number of special effects. Sometimes, for the serial killer movies in particular, you'll also combine a prop card from the serial killer, from the Stalking Death card deck. So, for example, a unnamed serial killer might have a hockey mask and a bloody big machete. That would be 2 props, but he would also be dangerous. He probably would be able to attack from shadows, which would be the special effects. Also, I'd say he's very likely to be able to what we call break and enter, which I think is the first card. Yeah, there we go, the first card. Break and enter. So you can combine the props and the special effects cards to create your monsters. Now, that's the base deck. That's the absolute minimum deck that you need for pretty much any adventure. You also will need, and this is where you start to see just how many cards really in this. Look at that. Good deck of cards there. You then need customized decks of cards for each genre, and you can mix and match the base deck and those. So all of these ones with the little zombies on the front, they are the scenes for surviving the horde. And we give a large deck of the, oops, there we go, it's a bit hard to see that. We give a large selection of those because you're not going to use every scene in every game. In fact, that would just make the game unplayable. The director gets to choose those scenes so they can guide the storyline and your actions around it. We also have some hints and direction cards as well. So the director's got something to think about before they start the game. And then each specialized deck will have talents and a broad range of descriptions that are appropriate for that movie. These are the tropes, these are the strengths of the characters that are appropriate for, in this case, a zombie movie, a surviving the horde movie. Likewise, we have appropriate flaws. Now, that doesn't mean you can only play those two decks, just that set, in a zombie movie. You could easily bring some of those into a slasher movie. Let's take a look at one. Cold as ice. You've seen worse. And basically that means that when you take any number of madness cards, you can direct them at another player. So you are super, super cool. That could easily work in a slasher, and it could really work well in a haunted house movie. So you can mix and match those decks. And now, this is what people get sort of really amazed by, is just how many hook cards we will be, that one there, how many hook cards we will be delivering in the game. And the reason for that is the director wants a lot of hook cards because they need a lot of flexibility, but they also want to keep to trope, and they want to mix and match those tropes. So having a big, broad deck of those cards, more than you would ever use in a game, gives the director a lot of flexibility. And again, you can reuse these hook cards between different adventures. A classic one for this would be the taboo card. Taboo. Lots of infected cards for zombie games, different types of infection. Wanted by the law, not who they seem to taboo. This would be a fantastic card to play, again, in a haunted movie or in a cultist type movie, or certainly in a slasher as well. And then, as if you didn't have enough cards, we then give special effects for each of the themed genre decks. So these are special effects designed explicitly, in this case, for a surviving the horde movie. So, for example, here's one at the bottom, The Departed. Chopping up this body just makes it still squiggly in lots of little parts. Or it's the Goliath zombie. It's a breeder. It can lay eggs on you, or it's a bloody infector. These are all archetypes that you find in surviving the horde type movies. And yes, you can use them in other decks, but you get the idea. Any deck. And finally, we get some specific props for this type of movie. Can of gasoline. Now, you're not really going to see that as a major trope in a slasher, certainly not in a haunted house movie. Machetes and power saws and so forth. Mind you, those could show up in slashers. You could swap those. But the antidote would be a card that you wouldn't see in a slasher. But it was very important for a zombie movie. So that's it. That's the types of cards that we have. I thought I'd show you those. Those are coming to me by just a pod. These are my second, third. They're actually my third bunch of pod cards. Basically, so I can check the artwork, hand these out, actually run them in game stores and so forth, and get a feel for how the game is actually running. But we're pretty damn chuffed with all of this stuff. So you can see card decks are all ready to rock and roll. With your help, we will be able to get those printed in much larger quantities at much higher quality and at a lower price overall. So that's really what the Kickstarter is all about. So look, that was a quick update. Keep asking me questions. I've tried to answer everybody. If I have missed you, I apologize. Ask again. Slaughter is a little over 50% funded now, so we're still chugging along. Next week will be the big week, so please keep spreading the word. Thanks, everyone. Bye.